Hello, it's the Office of Sustainability here. I'm McKenna, and today we have a special guest, Hana Creger. She is an SDSU alum, and she'll kind of explain for herself what she's gotten into since she graduated and advice for all of us. So, Hannah, welcome. Hana, sorry. Welcome. And do you want to just talk about what you're doing right now?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always, good to hear from San Diego State. So I'm the Environmental Equity Program Manager at the Greenlining Institute. And just for some background, Greenlining is a research and public policy nonprofit, and we advocate through public policy to improve the lives of low-income folks and communities of color across California. And so we work on a whole different many different policy areas, but within the environmental equity team, our goal is really to solve poverty and pollution at the same time. And so what that looks like, that could be bringing, green jobs, green technologies, green programs into these low-income communities that are overburdened by pollution. But then my specific focus on the team is mainly on the intersection of transportation, climate change, social justice issues. And so my day-to-day responsibilities kind of involves wearing many different hats, which is honestly my favorite part of the job. It started off with kind of a lot of research to even develop, well, what is our position and our strategy? It then kind of develops into using that research to influence policies and legislation that advance kind of the mission of our team. But it also involves kind of tracking the implementation of programs and policies, and also advising different projects and programs that are being implemented at the local and state level. And then lastly, a lot of the work involves communications. So, speaking at conferences or talking to the media, writing blogs and op-eds. A lot of this work is really aimed at spreading the word about all of this innovative climate and transportation policy work happening in California and how other places can follow that model.
Wow, that sounds so incredible, and I'm sure your work is having a crazy impact. And we actually, as far as like communication, education, we have a new environmental justice intern at our office, and all of this sounds so familiar. And we do have different, like, transportation intern and all of that. And the fact that your position involves all of those sectors, I'm sure that's a lot of work and definitely a full-time job. So thank you for all your energy being put into this incredible cause. And I just was wondering, how did you get into that position, or what was the transition like from graduating to your current role?
Yeah, it's funny. There is the internship requirement at San Diego State, and at the time I was like, oh, okay, I'll just like take this random internship. It probably won't be very applicable to my career in the future. And it's funny looking back because it basically turned out to be like exactly what I do now, but obviously on a kind of a more local scale. And it really did set me up along this path with, very kind of niche experience in the intersection of transportation, climate change, social justice. And so, yeah, this first internship really set me up along this route. But then after college, I moved back to the Bay Area for a Climate Corp Fellowship. This is a program that I believe now it's expanded. It operates all along the West Coast, and it places recent graduates in government, nonprofits, the private sector, all specific to climate mitigation and resiliency projects. And so my role was specific to sustainable transportation. And then that helped to set me up for my current role at Greenlining.
Wow, so you said you had an internship before the Climate Corps Fellowship?
Yeah, so that was, it was with the Cleveland National Forest Foundation. And it was interesting because, it's on paper, it seems like a very, conservation-focused organization. But how they came about was that, San Diego, it's a very sprawling city,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it yeah, kept encroaching on this national forest that just is to the east of San Diego. Beautiful place. You should all check it out. And so this nonprofit got involved in urban planning and transportation advocacy and really fighting for more sustainable transportation options and policies in the San Diego region. They were, it was an incredible organization to be involved with. They were very influential in actually some high-level California Supreme Court lawsuits in making sure that San Diego was living up to their climate action plan. And so I think that really gave me the first taste of policy is a very powerful tool for all of this work. And transportation is really the ultimate connector between environmental issues, economic opportunities and jobs, and just more sustainable cities more broadly.
Well, good thing they have the internship requirement as part of the sustainability major. It really helped you. And yeah, policy could not be more important because sometimes we stress the individualization responsibility, and that's, in the grand scheme of things, policy is what is going to lead us to a more successful implementation of all these projects. So that is definitely a point to hit. And
right, I completely agree with that. And just one last thing I want to add on that, I think there is a really beautiful connection between the individual actions and how that can result in public policy changes. So just for example, like the plastic bag ban, that took years of individuals being like, I'm not going to, use a plastic bag. And now let's create these petitions to get cities to ban plastic bags. There is a magnification of the individual action leading to policy change, but I think they really have to inform one another. And it can actually go the opposite way too. Public policy change then kind of forces individual action. So there's a lot of synergy there.
That's true. The connection is definitely key. And I was just going to ask since you've been working on so much policy and all these different project sectors, what has been your most, your proudest project, or just something that you managed to get done that just seemed like a overall win and your claim to fame, I guess?
Yeah. So, when I started off at Greenlining, I was really building out a whole area of work that we had never done before. I was, superficially familiar with these issues, but not to the level where I am now. And so I guess I'm just really proud of this journey that it's been to become an expert in the intersection of climate change, transportation, social justice, economic opportunities, and then how this fits into the future of technology in cities. I'm so lucky to have had incredible support, mentorship, and opportunities that have really now led to the publishing of these 3 research reports and tools, which has now led to being invited to speak at conferences around the country and to sit on all these different advisory committees for local and state government. It's just looking back about, we came into this work with into a relatively new and unexplored space, and we had no idea what this would turn into. And, now almost 3 years later, I'm just very proud of the impact of, how our research is impacting policies and programs around the country.
Wow. And at SDSU, sometimes we get caught in all our coursework and just the things we're learning. How did your experience at SDSU prepare you for your work now, and whether that was extracurriculars or just your actual classes? Could you just make that connection?
Yeah. So I would say that my work at Greenlining is just inherently intersectional. We do not approach environmental issues in a vacuum, and so the wide variety of interdisciplinary classes that SDSU provided definitely prepared me to always think about the intrinsic connection between climate change and social justice issues, capitalism, and I really appreciate that it just gave me a more well-rounded perspective, because there often is a misconception that sustainability is just about the environment. But, in all my classes at State, we always, learned and underscored the fact that true sustainability is also about all of the human impacts. And it's connected to things like, racial injustice and political power and, colonization and exploitation. And, some of my most memorable classes, opened up my mind to issues like food justice, migration patterns, political geography, social movements, cities and urban issues. And so I'm just very grateful for that intersectional and critical lens and always questioning things. And I'm very grateful for the small classes that really fostered that discussion. And it's so relevant now because, environmental justice and equity are really front and center in the mainstream environmental movement right now. And, it's really about time because this is after decades of the environmental movement, solely focusing on protecting natural lands. And it's great to see that there's finally an acknowledgement that we need to prioritize the needs of historically marginalized people like, low-income folks, people of color, indigenous communities and such.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about how we are starting to recognize the land we're on, like the people who were involved in the whole process. And I'm surprised it wasn't done before. It just makes so much sense. And what you said about sustainability being so overlapping, I think that's sometimes a challenge for people because they want you to define it. Like, what is sustainability? How is that a major? Like, what do you study? But so many things go into it, like what you said, and it's about societal issues. It is about the environment, but it originates from all these other causes. So I think that was a great thing to bring up, and it's hard for people to grasp it sometimes because it is so vague and broad, and it encompasses really everything we do. So that's what I love about it too. But I was gonna ask, because a lot of SDSU students are advocating for climate action on campus and wanting to see change in this movement. And with all the advisory committees you sit on and all the policy work, I was just hoping you had a recommendation for getting students' messages across and making people want to help, whether it's on campus or off campus or just in life. How do we get people to see the issue and make them want to join the movement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's interesting because there's been a lot of research around this. Like, how do you make people care?
Yeah.
And I would say, make your messaging about the local impact on people, on people's families. Because, the reality is, like, I'm sorry, but people just can't relate to polar bears and the burning of the Amazon. They can so easily disassociate from it because, oh, well, that's so far away, it doesn't directly affect me. And so instead, talk about how climate change is going to affect San Diego. Talk about wildfires, heat waves, sea level rise. Like, oh no, your favorite bar in Pacific Beach is now going to be underwater. Like, make it so real for people that they can't turn away. Make it about their ability to have children on a safe and habitable planet. And then back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of like getting people to help and contribute. I think in addition to the individual lifestyle changes like, eating less meat, driving less or driving cleaner cars, one of the single most impactful thing that an individual can do is to vote for local, state, federal politicians who are serious about climate action. And so, I think there's also a hyper focus on what's happening at the federal level, and people often aren't tracking the local and state policies, but that actually matters quite a bit more because you can pass all the federal policies you want, but if the states and if the local governments aren't actually implementing that work, that means nothing. And so I think there's definitely a need for people to be more aware of what's happening at the local level. And for that, I think any good climate action kind of plan really must involve registering people to vote, and in particularly folks who have barriers to voting, people who have been, historically barred from voting. So I think, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because, and we have a like Rock the Vote. I don't know, were they on campus when you started or when you were there? Rock the Vote. They just work on getting people registered, as many people as they can, because they and the rest of the SDSU community realizes how important it is, but it's hard to get people to the polls, even though it is so important.
Yeah.
And about what you said,
with like offer donuts or something, or like food, get people there at any cost.
Yeah, or while they're waiting in line, some sort of extra credit, like I don't know.
Yeah, extra credit.
That'll do it. And what you said about messaging about the local impacts, that is so important, and the time scale, because a lot of the times they're like, oh, in 2050 or 20 whatever, but it's happening now, and I do think we need to build that into the language more, because it's hard for people to care about the future when there's so many things happening right now. And then as far as the presidential thing, there's more drama and there's more, fire there, but local elections affect us more directly. So voting, thank you. And so where do you see yourself going from here with your work now? Do you see yourself staying there or going a different route? Just could you kind of build a roadmap to where you see your future?
I have found I really love policy. I really am drawn to the idea of addressing the root causes of injustice and environmental degradation. I think I learned very early on that I don't want to be working on the Band-Aid solutions for large systematic problems. And so, it's definitely very high-level policy work, but it's very fulfilling to see our local, state, and national impact on climate and transportation policy. And I think I definitely see myself at Greenlining for a good long while, just because we're at such an exciting place. Despite the Trump administration, other cities and states are looking to California for how we have centered equity and justice in our climate and transportation policies. And so it's been really exciting to travel around the country sharing those best practices and models. And, I think for now, I'm really happy to be kind of a nonprofit outside advocate. I briefly worked in government after college, and, it's good experience, but I think for now it is so nice and refreshing to be able to have the freedom to say what I want, do what I want, test and try new things and really innovate in this space, but perhaps later on going back into the government would be a good route.
Yeah, you don't have to be all PC all the time when you're not directly in government. Could you ever see yourself running for anything?
It's funny. I'm such a planner. Like I think I sometimes plan a little too much, but for some reason I'm like completely content with not having like a clear idea of what I'm going to be doing in 5 years or 10 years. Things have worked out so perfectly this far that I am just going to go with the flow, and whatever happens will work out exactly how it's supposed to. So maybe that'll be in the cards, maybe not.
I love that because, there's no point in wasting energy thinking about, what you're going to do next when your position right now is great. So I was just going to ask you what resources you think students should take advantage of, or any advice you have for current sustainable SDSU students, or whether that's like, we should listen to this podcast or read this book, take advantage of, these professors on campus, just whatever you think a toolkit some SDSU students could benefit from.
I definitely would encourage folks to just build really close, genuine relationships with professors, and take advantage of having those relatively small class sizes. You hear of people who have in the business school, I still have hundreds of people in their classes, and it's you don't get that same individualized attention. I would also just encourage folks to be super bold and out there with asking folks for informational interviews, for joining mentorship programs, Definitely participating in the Associated Students Sustainability Advisory Board. I found that was, not only looked really good on my resume, but also was great experience. And then, I also just have some more broad advice on career, but I can wait if you're going to ask that later on.
No, go for it. That's perfect.
Okay, cool. So, I would say just to choose your internships very wisely. They can open up a lot of doors for you. Like for me, I thought mine was kind of just this will work out maybe. It could be irrelevant. And I'm just super lucky that this was the perfect internship for me. It can really set you on a particular career track. And so, take that into consideration, because maybe that means choosing the internship that doesn't pay, but it's in a topic area that you're really interested in. And I would also say just to take time after undergrad to get that real world work experience. Nothing can replace that, and it's really what employers look for, not additional, master's degrees and whatnot. I would encourage folks to really wait at least 3 to 5 years getting work experience before going back for a master's to be, dead sure that, yes, I need a master's degree in order to advance, and really be able to justify taking time off of working and that financial investment. And I would also say, when looking for a job right out of college, the reality is that you're probably going to have to do at least a year of an internship, of a fellowship, in order to gain that experience to be competitive and to qualify for an entry-level job. I know some folks, they only apply for those entry-level jobs, which you definitely should still do at the same time, but, then they got discouraged when they didn't hear back, and then unfortunately just had to take a job in a kind of unrelated field just to support themselves. And so, yes, you may have to take a lower-paying internship or fellowship out of college, but the payoff is so worth it. You'll be much more competitive for an entry-level job, and then you can work your way up from there. And then I would also say that, sustainability is actually a really broad topic. It seems really niche when you're explaining it to people from the business school, but there's so many different avenues. There's conservation, there's transportation, energy, climate adaptation, waste and recycling. There's actually very few jobs out there that are just general sustainability. And so I think it's important to just be real with the fact that you may have to specialize. I used to be nervous about I'm getting pigeonholed into this topic. What if I want to work in something else? And to be honest, I think, at least that I have found, people hire specialists, not generalists. And so, once you have that topic area, that specialty, you still also have to think about the sector. It could be government, it could be consulting, or nonprofit advocacy like I do. And then even within that, you kind of have to specialize even further. So, do you want to do research within that? Do you want to work with people? Do you want to do project management? Do you want to do all of those things? And so I just think it's definitely worth giving that some thought, just so that you can really set yourself up for what kind of internship should I go with, because I know that's going to help me fulfill my later goals.
That is such good advice all across the board. Thank you so much. And I think a lot of students who will listen to this will take that to heart, because, within sustainability, even I really want to be a generalist because I love all of it. But you're right, pigeonholing can sometimes be a good thing because you can't know everything about all the sectors. So, it's just what we want to spend our time on. Is there any last thoughts you want to say? Thank you so much for coming on. If there's any last things, we're going to put a way to reach her if you have other questions. But I'll open the floor in case you have one last thought.
I guess I would say, so I'm so thankful that the sustainability major required studying abroad. What an amazing benefit. But I would say that I think it is worth thinking about when you're choosing your location. Is this location known for sustainability? Do they offer, similar courses? And it's funny because it's like I totally did not do that at all intentionally, but I just accidentally or like happened to choose Amsterdam, which was an amazing place. And looking back, it absolutely did end up influencing my view on urban planning and transportation as it relates to environmental issues. And they just coincidentally happened to have amazing work done on kind of sea level rise and living with water and adaptation. So unintentionally, my choice to study abroad in Amsterdam definitely revealed to me that we do not need to live in a car-oriented society. Coming back to San Diego is quite a shock, but it definitely put me on the track to be like, all right, I think transportation absolutely is going to be my focus area. And actually, San Diego ended up being a good place to do that work because there's such a huge need for sustainable transportation infrastructure and good public policy to support that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and we look forward to, if you're ever on campus, stop by our office and we will connect. So thank you again, and goodbye. We will put this on several different places where people can listen, but thank you again, Hana, and we appreciate you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.